Ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be back. I know this is the 10th World CEO Forum. It's my second, but I attended both of them since I took over at WBCSD, so I'm very pleased to be here. I will use a few PowerPoint slides to quickly circle around the world and tell you what I think is happening in the world of sustainability, and then drive it back to what I think should be on your agenda as you are in this summit today. A quick circle of the world. The world has been looking at sustainability for quite a while now. Basically back in 1970, the Club of Rome, for the first time, had a document out called Limits to Growth. In 1992, 20 years ago, the UN organized the first Earth Summit in Rio, in which a document called Agenda 21 was published. And if you take the trouble of downloading that document and reading it today, you'll be amazed at how up-to-date the challenges that were described 20 years ago are still today. I would argue the only thing that has changed is the urgency of the matter at hand has gone up. And the world has continued to engage all the way up until a few months ago in Rio, when there was the Rio Plus 20 conference. The big change, and that is important for you to note, between the Rio 6 months ago and the Rio 20 years ago, is that there were 400 CEOs in the rooms of Rio this time, where there were almost no business people in the first one 20 years ago. So business has come to the fore. Sustainability has been discussed a long time, but if we're honest about it, we're not making the progress that we were hoping to make. Poverty is still a major issue. The environmental damage is going up, and one can argue water is one of the elements of that. The carbon emissions continue to grow. It was said in the lunch meeting, it is now written down in more and more formal documents, a 2-degree target warming for this planet is becoming a fantasy. 4, 5, or maybe even more degrees is a more realistic trajectory unless we are able to change course very rapidly. And all around these topics is, of course, the ever-increasing population of the planet. 7 billion people now, moving up to 9 or maybe even 10 billion people in the next few decades. And not only the population growth, also the growth of the middle class is a major trend, which for business people is always a very hard one. Because growth of middle class means growth of consumption, means growth opportunities in revenue terms, but it also means an increase in the demand for scarce resources. And if these long-term problems were our only issue, it could be dealt with, but we're in the middle of a pretty complex set of crises. Of course, the economic crisis has been with us since the financial world got into trouble back in 2008. The euro crisis following that, and in many parts of the world, bankruptcies are up, unemployment, particularly youth unemployment, begins to get a real issue, and food commodity prices have been on the rise as well. And if that wasn't enough of a crisis, then look at the weather. All around the world, weather patterns are changing and are getting more aggressive. And it's very appropriate, Dr. Pachari, for you to select water as the theme for this year's summit. I normally say that water is the language in which the planet talks to us people. Whether it is floods, whether it's droughts, whether it's ice melting, water is always somewhere in the story. And we've seen many, many bad stories in 2012. And if you ask the scientists, there's more and more concerns that these bad stories are just the beginning of tipping points that could become a lot worse. And if that wasn't enough of a crisis, let's look at the social tensions that are building everywhere in the world. Not just in Spain, where youth unemployment is now rising to over 40%, but South Africa mining, the issues you had to deal with here in India in recent weeks, energy policy coming to the streets of Japan. Everywhere you can sense the tensions in societies going up. So we all came to Rio, and this is a business meeting, so here we can speak clear language. Rio failed to deliver. There was a document in Rio, which is an achievement in itself given the current political regimes, but it is a document that is not going to save the world. The future we want is full of warm language, but not of enough action. The one good thing coming out of Rio is the fact that business is now recognized by all stakeholders, including governments, as a critical element in the solution. So business solutions for a sustainable world are going to be the big theme for anyone talking about business, talking about sustainability in the next few years. The one thing I would like to put in your mind today is let's not talk too long about CSR. CSR is nice, but CSR isn't going to save the world either. I always say, you know, you've come all the way to Delhi to be part of this summit, so you know why we are here. You also know, and particularly if you go to some of the breakout sessions this afternoon, what it is we need to do. We certainly know when we need to do it, which is now, not in 5 or 10 years from now, but we need action and solutions now. So if we know the why, the what, and the when, the only question left on the table is how are we going to do it? And for business that means how are we going to scale up the solutions that we know are out there? Because there's plenty of business solutions out there. Indian examples on this page, global examples as well. Whether it is the reach into the poor rural communities, the rehabilitation of ecosystems, energy positive examples, or radical examples like the EP&L that Puma has put in place globally. It is about scaling up. And anyone who's new to the discussion, let me give you a handle on how solutions can be scaled up. Of course, we need many more businesses to be part of the sustainability journey. But individual companies, through their innovation, through their transparency in reporting, through setting themselves stretch targets, can and will do more. By smartly working together in sectors where you can share best practices and rise the level of standards, we will see further action. And we saw Bruno Lavont this afternoon in the lunch meeting talk about cement and the cement sector approach, and that is one of the best examples in the world. Cross-sectorial, there will be a lot of innovation. Cross-sectorial, either across value chains or across complex systems like cities or mobility, will drive solutions. And the last one, not the least one, is going to be we're going to have to change the rules of the game. So what can business do? Business, as a provider of business solutions, can do in 3 phases different things. Some of you, most of you, many of you will be involved in some form of philanthropic approach to sustainability, helping a good cause, doing some community work, anything goes. The current frontier for companies is to really integrate sustainability in their core business. In every decision you make, sustainability, whether it's environmental or social, should be measured and weighed in. The last stage, and that is a stage which will take a few years to develop, but we will get to a situation that all companies are going to have to play. And we do that by changing the rules. I have made 1 million speeches in my first year in this job, and this part was one of the funniest ones when I did it in the World Conservation Congress in Jeju. Can you imagine a room, 3,500 conservationists, not particularly necessarily friends of business, and I started my speech by saying, I am a capitalist, which in that room went down really well. But let me tell you what a capitalist is. A capitalist is somebody who puts capital to work and he expects something back, which we capitalists call, we employ capital and we want a return, and therefore we talk return on capital employed. The mistake we've made, and that's where the rules of the game are going to have to change, and that's what will drive real scale, is we only measure and manage returns on financial capital. And we need to move to a world where we're going to include natural and social capital in the returns we want. And that's going to lead to a revolution in reporting, in accounting, in valuation, and in the way business ticks. I wish you a fabulous summit. I am extremely excited by the fact that this summit is not just talk, but it's totally about solutions and actions. And I wish you, I wish India, I wish Dr. Pachari all the success in bringing it to the fore here in your beautiful country. Thank you.